The Korean language has been witnessing an unprecedented boom in popularity in recent years, propelled by the tremendous success of Korean content, including K-pop, K-dramas, and movies. A survey conducted by the Modern Language Association found that while university language course enrollments in the US between 2016 and 2020 had been falling for most languages, including Japanese, Chinese, and Spanish, Korean has increased by 25%. A first-hand witness to this phenomenon is Dr. Ross King, a distinguished professor specializing in Korean language and literature at the University of British Columbia in Canada. Moreover, he's the founder of the Korean Language Village at Concordia Language Villages in Minnesota, the US, providing a unique opportunity for individuals to immerse themselves in Korean language and culture. He joins us today via video for our Multicultural Week special interview to tell us some more about this village, his passion for the Korean language, and more. Dr. King, hello, and thank you for your time today.
Hello, and thanks for having me on the program.
Can you briefly introduce yourselves to our listeners in your own words and the classes that you're teaching at the UBC?
Sure. So, as you said, my name is Ross King. I have been teaching Korean language and linguistics and literature since 1995 at the University of British Columbia. I teach lately mostly advanced Korean language courses. I am teaching a new course on Hanja, or Chinese characters as they're used in Korean and modern Korean. I'm also teaching a course on 15th century Middle Korean, back to the time when Sejong actually promulgated the script, like you just mentioned. And then, as just for fun on the side, I'm teaching a class on Hanmun, or classical Chinese, the way Koreans learned it before the 20th century.
Right, so you're covering all bases, it seems, related to Korean language and the history of the Korean language. How did you first come across Korean and the Korean language, and how did your interest develop?
It was sort of an accident. It was in the second year of university. I had already taken a year of Japanese and also a year of Arabic in my first year. I had taken a bunch of European languages in high school, and I just wanted to try something different. And I encountered a professor who was also working on Korean in addition to Japanese. And they didn't teach Korean at the time, but he found some funding for me to hire a tutor, and one thing led to another. I went to Korea the summer after that and just kept learning. It was through linguistics. It was kind of an intellectual approach, as opposed to, if you look at all the professors in North America who are a generation above me, they were either missionaries or spies or soldiers or Peace Corps, and I was none of the above.
Mm. So what kept you going? You said you studied various languages, Japanese, Arabic, and European languages. What was it about Korean that kept drawing you in?
Korean was really basically a black box. There was no history whatsoever, virtually no tradition of anybody learning Korean in the United States or outside of Korea, really. There were no good textbooks, there were no good grammars, there were no programs teaching the language. And so it was sort of this puzzle to be cracked, and there was also very little research, and I just felt like it was sort of a challenge to be taken up. So it was really, again, a kind of intellectual puzzle at first through the language.
Right, and you have therefore contributed hugely to Korean language academia over the years. And we should also talk about the fact that you're the founder of the Korean Language Village at Concordia Language Villages in Minnesota. It's dubbed the Lake in the Woods, or Supsoge Hosu in Korean. Can you fill us in on what this is, how it was founded, and what its goals are?
Sure. Well, first of all, I mean, full disclosure, I said I had studied a bunch of European languages as a kid, and I studied Russian, German, French, and Spanish at the language villages, at Concordia Language Villages, for about 8 years in the 1970s. So I had experienced this thing called a language village personally as a child. And I basically, once I got to graduate school and after, I was so frustrated with the quality of Korean language instruction, and I was so frustrated with the infrastructure for Korean, teaching Korean to foreigners. And also, if you, even to this day, there are still extremely few opportunities for learners under the age of 18 in North America to start learning Korean. So I thought it would be a good idea to try and make that particular language village model available to young people. And so what it is, the idea of a language village is basically, the simple way to describe it is it's language camp. So anything you, I mean, so American kids, Canadian kids, they all go to summer camp in the summer for 1 week, 2 weeks, 4 weeks. And so you do everything that you would do at a summer camp, but it's all in the target language. All of your staff, all the adults that you meet are speakers of the language and are there to help you learn Korean or whatever the language is. And it's a not-for-profit program. And you go for either, really depending how old you are, like little kids, if you're 7 to 10, maybe just 1 week, if they're going away from home for the first time. But it's overnight, right? So it's you're there for, you're 24/7, you're away from home for 1 week or 2 weeks or up to a month. And for the month-long program, it's for high school kids. And basically, what you do is you get a year's worth of high school credit for going for 1 month. It's fully accredited to provide the equivalent of 180 hours of classroom instruction. So it's really intense. It's very effective because it's immersion. Everything's done in Korean, and it's fun. It's a blast. You meet lots of fellow kind of learners of the language. In this case, Korean. Everybody's there for the same reason. Everybody's there because they're really excited about Korean.
So it's a full immersion experience, putting you in the deep end, essentially. But at the end of it, you should.
And so, I mean, sorry to interrupt, but a lot of times when Koreans back in Korea hear about this, they immediately assume, oh, this is a kind of school. And I get regular emails once a month from people I don't know in Korea who are teachers saying, oh, I would love to come and be a teacher at Supsoge Hosu. And then I have to explain, well, it's not like you just go and teach your one class for 50 minutes and then you're done for the rest of the day. It is 24/7 dealing with kids, up in front of kids. It's exhausting work. It's a blast, but it's not school. And so A, it's not school, and B, it's way more fun than school, and C, it's actually more effective than school.
When you say it's not a school, what do you mean? What's the difference?
So school, learning a foreign language in a classroom is a very sterile and not so fun way to do it. You're cordoned off, oftentimes with something like 25, 30, 40 students in the room. At the language village, you're just living your life, and the ratio of staff to villagers is 1 to 4. So it's a very rich language environment and staff to villager ratio. And it never stops. So by the time you leave, even after 2 weeks, you're dreaming. You're having dreams where you're speaking the language in your dreams. If you just do dribs and drabs, an hour a day, maybe 3 hours a week in a classroom, you're never going to get anywhere. So it's a very different approach to learning it the traditional way in a classroom.
It sounds pretty incredible, but effective as well then. You're saying students dream in Korean after 2 weeks, just 2 weeks.
Actually, I mean, in some ways, again, I mentioned how frustrating it is with the infrastructure for learning Korean outside of Korea. The problem we've been having with the language village is that our kids might go, let's say they go for 3 summers, and they do the 4-week program 3 summers in a row. So in 3 years of the equivalent of high school Korean. And they go, oh, I love this language so much. When I go to university, I want to make sure I go to a university that teaches Korean. And, there's not that many. There's only about 140. I mean, there's more than there were. But then they choose their university on the basis of being able to take Korean. Then they get to university on their first day, and they take a placement test, and they place into third-year Korean, and they don't offer third-year Korean at this university because they don't have enough people to teach it. And so a lot of our kids run out of road, even, as soon as they get to university. And so this is what I mean when I say the infrastructure is still really weak. It's true that there are 100 universities, 140 universities teaching it in North America, but there are only like 30 or 40 that teach 4 years.
Right, so you're saying the infrastructure is weak, but I'm also guessing it's because demand has shot up for Korean in recent years. I understand the village didn't have that many students in the early 2000s, but you began to see an increase about 7 years ago on the back of the rise of the Korean wave, Hallyu Korean culture, right?
That's absolutely right. So numbers have shot up. There's more demand than we can handle. And this is true not just for Supsoge Hosu, the language village, but for all Korean language programs right across the board in North America. Last year, here at UBC, where I teach, we turned away, I think, almost 200 students from first year Korean because we didn't have enough teachers to teach the extra sections. The University of Toronto turned away 300 students last year from first year Korean because they just don't have the teachers. And so what's happened is K-pop is great in the sense that it has increased the demand, but it has also, the flip side of that is that it has kind of exposed how really weak and sort of feeble the infrastructure is and how really unprepared we all are for Korean to be so popular.
Right, so there's a concern about how sustainable this popularity for Korean is. Right now, of course, Hallyu is a key factor that's contributing to the rapid increase in demand for learning. But what happens if Hallyu wave recedes? Is that a real concern that you have?
It is. It's a concern. The worry I have is that K-pop brings the students to us. It creates this hunger for Korean, but K-pop will not keep the students in our programs. There has to be some kind of future that the students can see. They have to be able to see a way forward, so that they say, "Oh, if I keep studying this language, I can probably get a scholarship to go to Korea for a year and study." And those kinds of opportunities are really thin on the ground, and there's just not a lot of investment into that kind of opportunity, especially for North American students wanting to go spend time, like a year in Korea. So that's a problem. And then, of course, so what happens if K-pop fizzles out? And right now, the only institutional support for Korean language education comes from the Korean government and basically from one place, which is the Korea Foundation, which has a very weak budget, is very bureaucratic. Let me put it this way: it's really not a good idea for Koreans to put all of their eggs in one basket and just rely on the Korean government to take care of all this. So we need other leaders to step forward, like from business or foundations or private individuals, to try and I guess create more investment for learners of Korean.
Right. So how do we encourage that? How do we address the situation? Should the Korean government still be putting more effort into supporting this as well and encouraging, as you said, private investments into these areas? What can be done?
Well, so absolutely, the Korean government should, of course, and the first thing they should do is double or triple or quadruple the budget of the Korea Foundation, which really doesn't have nearly enough money to deal with all of this. But for example, one thing I've discovered that we've discovered in the last 3 years as we try to raise money to build a really nice year-round winterized Supsoge Hosu on the same lake with the other language villages, we've realized that even if we find a donor in South Korea who is willing to make a significant gift, like a donation to Supsoge Hosu, it is virtually impossible and bureaucratically almost disincentivizing for them to get that money out of Korea. So that there aren't even good legal pathways for donors inside Korea to get money out. So there's very simple legal steps that I think could be taken. But the other thing is people just need to know. Koreans, up until now, this is completely new territory for Koreans. Not in their wildest dreams would Koreans even 20 years ago have thought, oh my God, our language is so popular, it's a problem for us now. And so I think a lot of it's just about awareness raising. So thank you for having me on the program, because most Koreans never think about this. And unfortunately, the only day they ever think about it is on Hangul. because that's the one day where they sort of put down their English language textbooks and stop learning English, because they're all crazy to learn English and think about Korean, and then 364 days, we have to wait for the next time around. So I think part of it's just about getting the word out. I think part of it is also making sure, finding more diversified sources of support for this, not just the Korea Foundation.
Well, it's clear that you have a passion for the Korean language and a desire to see it continue to flourish even further than it has now. Very briefly, just to wrap up, how do you feel when you see Korean language flourish like it has in recent years, and Korean culture spread around the world like this? And what message do you have for Korean learners out there?
Oh, well, how do I feel? I mean, I like most Koreans, I'm also still kind of flabbergasted, because when I started learning in 1980, and not in my wildest dreams either would I have thought that Korean would be really popular like it is today. So I would just tell learners, you got to hang in there. It's not an easy language. And so far, Korea as a nation and Koreans as a people have not yet made it as easy to learn Korean as Japan has made it easy for learners to learn Japanese, or China for Chinese, etc. In other words, all these other countries that are kind of big players now on the world stage, they've been doing this for decades. In other words, they've been helping foreigners learn their language and culture, sometimes for 100 years. And Korea is in some ways a new kid on the block. And so I think Koreans have to really step up their game and start. The analogy I would use is that Korea so far as a nation, when it comes to promoting itself and promoting its language, is kind of, to use a boxing analogy, Korea is a heavyweight country, but it's basically still punching lightweight.
Yeah. Well, we certainly hope that the current popularity of Korean Korean culture does continue, and that more opportunities do emerge as well, especially so that Korea can also repay the passion and effort from figures like yourself who have paved the way as well for Korean education overseas. Well, we'll have to leave it there. We're speaking to Dr. Ross King from the University of British Columbia. Thank you once again for your time today.
Thank you.